Today's episode is all about the power of words. I can't wait for you to meet our guest who will tell you how the power of words matter. Let's watch.
Hi, my name is Justin Clark, and I'm the president of the board of directors for Driving Single Parents, a 501c3 nonprofit serving the citizens of San Antonio and Bexar County, Texas. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the great work that our organization is doing for the citizens of San Antonio. What you're about to see is just a few photos and videos of the way that we're changing lives for single parents in and around San Antonio, Texas. Our first giveaway took place in April of 2017, just one short month after the formation of our organization. John, a Bexar County resident, was the victim of a horrible drunk driver incident. He and his daughter survived the crash, and we were so proud to give our first car to this deserving family. Fast forward to 2020, a very difficult year for nonprofits. We were able to secure 4 vehicles for single parents in need. Our organization, including our board of directors, list of partners, and portfolio of people we've been able to help in San Antonio, continues to grow, and it's all thanks to donors and local community organizations that have helped us along the way. This giveaway took place in 2021 and shows that we continue to help single parents even after the struggles brought about by COVID-19. Because of limited funds and the overwhelming need, we at Driving Single Parents are incredibly selective with the people we help. Some are victims of domestic violence. Others had a spouse pass away tragically or otherwise fell on hard times. These single parents show adversity in the face of challenge and aren't looking for a handout. We offer a hand up and help get them back in the driver's seat. Many of the single parents we help go on to graduate college, get promotions, get married, mentor others, and some have even been so touched by the gift we gave them that they have decided to join our board of directors to pay it forward and ensure the continued growth of our organization. If you would like to help our organization continue to grow and continue to help single parents in need in San Antonio, Texas, and Bexar County, Texas, we would really appreciate your support. Please visit us online at www.drivingsingleparents.org. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Little Give. Today we have with us Coach Reed. Coach Reed, why don't you tell us about yourself, where you're from, and what you're all about?
Happy to. Happy to be speaking with you all. My name's Coach Reed. I was a soccer coach primarily for about 30 years. I have 2 master's degrees, one in sports psychology, one in early childhood education. Those 2 degrees really helped shape my philosophy and outlook on coaching sports. And because of that, I got into actually not just coaching sports, but I've coached coaches for about the last decade. I've worked with governing bodies, high schools, youth sports programs, state associations, whoever is looking for somebody to come in and work with the coaches, setting better environments in which children can learn and grow. And then also working with mental skills of our athletes so that we're creating excellence beyond the game. That's the short of me.
Wow, that's awesome. You got a lot going on.
I do. It keeps me busy.
So what's your favorite part?
It's the light bulb moments working with, even whether it's coaches, administrators, or athletes. There's that moment where they either get something, they level up to the next level, or they acquire a skill they never had before, or that, there's epiphany moments when you see the eyes change and everything sort of lights up for them. Those are my favorite moments, especially with the smallest athletes, because the light bulb moments with the younger ones happen all the time. And so that's my favorite part, because they're little things, but they create a big impact.
That's awesome. So what got you into coaching?
I was at my high school, one of my mentors, Paul Rockwood, he was my high school coach, and I was 16 years old, and he came to me one day and said, "There's something about you. I know that you'll do this well. I want you to do something. I want you to get into coaching." He said, "It's going to not only change the way you see the game of soccer, but it's going to change your life." And so at 16, I was coaching an 8-year-old boys team, the Grossbeck Killer Bees. And he's right. It didn't just change the way I saw the game of soccer or sports in general. It transformed my life. I'm here today because of that coaching experience.
Wow. So then you went on to do some bigger things. Why don't you tell us about some of the other things you're doing?
Sure. So I did play college soccer, but I knew that there wasn't much after college for me from a soccer perspective because I'd been coaching for so long. That really was my passion. So I went on and got that first master's degree. And then I started for a very long time. I didn't think I could coach full time, even though that's why I got the master's, was to be a full time coach. I didn't know if I could sustain a family and actually sustain that lifestyle. So it was a hobby for a really long time. And then in 2010 range, 2011, my wife asked a big what if question. What if you could coach full time? What if this was your impact, your legacy? And so we made the leap. I started working with clubs. I've run youth sports organizations. I was executive director of a small club in Cincinnati called Star Soccer Club, which it was the perfect model for us to develop this club that was about creating excellence beyond the game. It wasn't about sports for us. It was about great human beings. And then in 2015, one of the biggest moments, other than marriages and children being born, one of the biggest moments of my life was I did a TEDx in 2015 on the power of a coach's words. And that sort of put me in this space where suddenly I was working with other organizations about coaching methodologies.
So
and then I have a book coming out. Sorry.
That's awesome. So how did you end up on a TED Talk? Was that something you aspired to do, or just kind of like one of those things that just kind of came up and you ended up in that situation?
Did not aspire to it, actually. I did some public speaking. I locally with small groups. Of course, as a coach, you're used to being in front of people, but the idea of being in front of an auditorium of 1,000 people and potentially having that video put out to the world was something uncomfortable for me at the time. But my wife, I talked a lot about my philosophy, what I was seeing and experiencing in sports, things that went on that I knew that the research, the science behind it showed that we could do it a little bit differently and get great results, better results, or even the same, as other people. And so my wife said, listen, you need to share your message with the world before it's too late. You need to tell people how you feel, and you have science to back you. It's not like this is something that's made up. You're leaning on some really good scientific research in your background, because at that point I had both master's degrees. And so she, for about a month, kept telling me, you need to apply for TEDx. You need to apply. And the day that the applications were due to become to audition, she called me and said, have you applied yet? And I said, no. And she says, I'm coming home at lunch. If you don't apply, I'm coming home and doing it for you. So she's always sort of been she's been that fan. She's been that accountability partner. And so I applied, and one thing led to another. I was standing on a stage about 6 months later.
That's incredible. So on the stage, what was your main mission? Like, what was it that you shared with the audience that was so impactful?
There's a lot of us think it's the skills. A lot of us believe that as a coach, our legacy to our athletes is the skills. My biggest message was, it's not the skills you teach, it's the words you use. That's really the legacy, is what you do for your athletes, for them as human beings beyond the game. And it starts with those words. The words we use have a tremendous impact on the brain of our athletes. And so we can be positive and encouraging and empowering and elevate people. We don't have to demean people to get excellence out of them. And when we do it this way, we actually build better people. It's the whole Frederick Douglass quote of I'd rather build strong children than fix broken adults.
Right. So can you give us an example of what a conversation would be with a student that would be empowering instead of like tearing them down?
Sure. Actually, and I gave an example in the TEDx about it. I watched another coach. I watched a youth athlete not take the game-winning shot because it was on his left foot and he wasn't left-footed, or for whatever reason, but he just didn't take the shot, and it was wide open and it would have won the game for his team. And he's coming off the field, and I'm waiting for this coach because I've seen it play out hundreds of times on fields. Every weekend I would see coaches scream at their players, or what are you thinking? What the heck's wrong with you? Why would it, you lost the game, that type of stuff. I'm waiting for this coach. And he was a young coach. He was younger than me. And it was a tremendous moment because as the kid comes over, he goes, hey, how come you didn't take the shot? He goes, look, I believe in you, but I need you to believe in you. I need you to take that shot next time to prove it to yourself. And it was like, wow. Just telling somebody that you believe in them, that you have full faith in them, that they have this power that they haven't even unlocked yet. What that does for, especially for a young player, is it lights a fire in them that will live way beyond that moment itself. And so that's one of the conversations that I witnessed that really did have a huge impact on my future coaching career.
Yeah, and I can see how that would work, positive reinforcement versus doing it out of fear, which I think in a lot of cases, I haven't done any any sports myself. I mean, I was the high school mascot. I mean, that's not really a sports, but I have seen a lot of where coaches really do just come down hard, and they feel like if they instill that fear, that they'll just do it and do better because they don't want to let the coach down. So it's neat that your whole thing is to show people that no, you can actually build up the athlete and make them believe in themselves, and you'll get 10 times the better performance than you would by forcing them to by fear. So that's great. I think that's awesome.
Definitely. It's, you can demand excellence without demeaning the human. And the other thing that I saw a lot of was people say, oh, but he gets results, or but she gets results, or but we get results. And the answer was always at what cost? Because in this moment, at this point in time, yes, that demeaning behavior is getting results, but at what cost to the brains of our children? At what cost to those relationships, the burnout, all of that? And what we find now, and I talk about it in the TEDx, is there's actually research out there by Mark Robert Waldman, where he took and did functional MRI scans of brains of children who, had functional lifestyles, brains of children in physically abusive situations, and brains of children in verbally abusive situations. And the long and short of it was the research showed that there is no difference between the damage being done to the brain by somebody who's been under chronic physical abuse versus chronic verbal abuse. And so my argument was, I'm not saying that coaches are verbal abusers, but when it's week in, week out, constantly being demeaned, constantly being yelled at, living in fear of failure or living in fear of disappointing your coach because we've created this carrot stick fear relationship, that there's the potential for damage to the brain of our athletes. Even if that doesn't happen, the thing that I would always tell coaches is the brain is structured in a way that when there is a stressor, that the amygdala is going to be the part of this. Dan Siegel talks about the brain in the palm of the hand. And this is the logic center. This is, the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part that usually allows us to respond rather than react to stressors. But when overstressed, that part's going to go awry and lose control. This part, the amygdala, the brainstem area, the fear center of the brain is what is in control. So if we're yelling at players, they can't learn. The logic center's gone. They can't acquire the skills. They're too busy thinking, what do I run? Do I fight? Or do I freeze in this moment? And so that's one of the things that as coaches, we can get better results if we take a step back and have meaningful conversations with our athletes rather than screaming at them.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And that's neat how you talk about the science that goes along with it and the research shows and all. Is there any other things that you want to add about research that you've learned that you found like shocking or interesting?
Well, you just put up the tool cards. So Jane Nelson had been doing this type of work for, about 40 years, I believe. And she reached out to me when I moved to San Diego, and I attended one of her positive discipline classes and fell in love with the style. And so she reached out to me and she said, I've been looking for a partner to write these coaching cards. And so she's got tool cards for the classroom and tool cards for the workplace and tool cards for parenting and tool cards for the marriage. But we created these for coaching. And what I discovered with Jane was she had amassed all the research from, Adlerian psychology and Adolf Reichers and some of these others about self-actualization and this positive discipline approach. And to see that research and to see that it took my love of language to a different level, because I started really not just the words in general and how we spoke to people, but nitpicking individual words, because Jane would say, you can be kind and firm. Instead of telling a child no, you can say, I see what you're saying, and we're now going to do this activity though. So the positive discipline, the research around that area started to show me that it's not just words in general, but we can get down to very specific words. And in the last year, what dawned on me as the book was coming to fruition and we were getting it ready, the manuscript ready to go to publish, was that the world I've lived in is very vague. Coaching is hardware. It's very clear what we do. But the software side, the side that I love the most, the side that talks about the brain and mental acuity and mental strength and resilience and coaching pedagogy and all these pieces, it's really hard to explain to people what I do. And in the last year, what dawned on me was every word matters. Like that is the gatekeeper between the body and the brain. It are words. And so if we as coaches aren't picking and choosing and intentional about the words we're using in educational environments, it's not just that I'm not worried about the damage now. We may not be conveying the message in the way that they can learn it and need to learn it. And so there's this breakdown in our athletes. If we're not imprinting or helping them imprint a good, strong, internal self-talk voice, then that's where the breakdown of performance is going to happen. People talk about the 4 inches, those 4 inches between the ears become the most important thing at the elite levels. Well, That's a muscle that we have to train from the very first day we work with athletes, not when they're 25 and in the Olympics, but when they're 9, 10, and 11. What are we saying? How are we saying things to them? What words are we helping them create a strong, positive voice in their own brain so that they have these resilient, what I call Spartan mindsets that can handle adversity, that can adapt through things, that can innovate, that are creative, that are problem solving, and have that competitive nature of always wanting to grow.
That's awesome. So what is it you think that it is about you that made you want to share this message so much? Of course, besides the encouraging words of your wife.
I had phenomenal mentors. My dad was my first coach. He was not a soccer coach. He was a football and basketball coach by trade. And he was thrown into this world sport he'd never even played, didn't understand. So he read all the books he could, but he realized when he coached us, because he didn't know the skills, that he was going to coach the humans and create a solid team with good values. And so he's focused on all those soft skills with us. And it was, and I got to a certain age where he said, you need to stop playing for me because you're beyond my skill set as a soccer coach. And so he sent me on, and I had other mentors like Paul Rockwood, and I had a mentor named Donnie when I was younger, who was my coach, and then Jane Nelson as a mentor. Having those kinds of mentors in my life, as I say in the TEDx, this isn't just me speaking. This is, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, as the quote is. If I can see further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulder. My mentors and other coaches I've worked with, and every time I do a workshop, I take something away. And you could be a first-year coach working with 5-year-olds. I'm going to learn something from you that's going to make me a better person. So I think that's why it's me. It's just, I realize that I'm just pulling in all this knowledge and these opportunities to grow and learn from all these other amazing people. And then I'm going to share it as the mouthpiece through this book.
Yes, I love that. And I also love that when we talked in the pre-show a little bit, you had said that, initially you were kind of focused on the players, and then you realized, hey, if I can get to the coaches and have the coaches coach the students in this way, or the players in this way, then they can go on to talk to their kids that way, and how it'd be like an ongoing give on your part. I thought that was really super interesting. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's another conversation. Again, my best partner is my wife, and this is another conversation. We were just the other night saying, "Gosh, we have such great conversations." always listen to your wife. It's true, and I even said it in my TEDx that she was right. I have to say that because she's in the room. No, but one of the things about the conversations I have with my wife is we always try to help each other become better, and we try to see the bigger picture. And she and I start talking about scale and how awesome it was. It's scary to put your life out there through a book or to get in front of a group of people and talk. I can handle a team of 15, 12-year-olds, and I can handle a group of like 5 or 6 coaches. But when I was coaching the teams, one of the things she said is, if you want your legacy to really have an impact, to really have these echoes beyond the game that you talk about, then we need to think about what's the scale. Like, you can't be afraid of the next level. The next level means that I can do a little bit. I can get in front of a room of 100 coaches, which isn't a lot. But those 100 coaches will now go out and over the next 10 years could work with thousands of athletes each. So now I'm working with hundreds of thousands of people that have heard this message. So a little thing like doing a workshop with 100 coaches could have such a big impact. And not just from me, but 10 or 20, 30 or 40 years from now, that impact could still be replicating itself through the next generation who become coaches.
Yeah, like a ripple effect. Just keeps giving. The gift that just keeps giving.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, did you ever experience a time when you felt some fear, or like you were a little bit self-doubt, or did you always feel like super gung-ho, like I can do this and I'm going to rock it out?
No, the imposter syndrome muscle in me is tremendously strong. No, I think anytime there's something you're passionate about and you care deeply about and is very near and dear to your own heart, anytime you want to put that out into the world, it's scary. So there's always been those moments when the TEDx came out, I was scared to death. And my wife said, you're probably gonna have a target on your back from some people who don't agree with you, and you're gonna call you soft and things like that. And she said, so what do you really want to get out of this? And I said, if just one of those coaches that I've witnessed that's berated or demeaned a kid because they just didn't know better. It's not that they're bad people. It's just what you don't know, you don't know. If one of those coaches changes their tactics, changes their way, then that was a huge success. And that helps the fear subside, right? And the book coming out, it doesn't actually hit the bookshelves. It's in pre-order now, so it doesn't come out until April 18th. I'm still scared to death. I'm still afraid that somebody's going to read it and be like, what, dude, this is horrible. There's that fear. So I've given copies of the book to quite a few people to sort of help bolster that confidence.
Yes. So how did you push through it? I mean, how did you make yourself do it, even though you were afraid?
So there's, did you hear the quotes from a lot of the famous motivational speakers and Tim Ferriss's and the Jocko Willings and the Jay Shetty's and the Brendan Burchards and Lewis Howes and those, sometimes getting comfortable being uncomfortable is probably the best thing we can ever do. And I've got friends who were in the armed forces, and they talk about, the 40% being pushed beyond where your mind thinks you can go. And then that's where you actually have true growth. And so they would, I would talk with friends and they would point it out. You get under a bar. Sometimes I weightlift with my son. I'll get under a bar and the weight under the bar is so heavy that I'm so afraid I'm going to drop this bar. I've got a spot, but if they say when you take that bar off of the rack, if you're not a little bit scared, it's not a 1 rep max weight. And so it's the same thing. It's like, if I'm not a little bit scared before I put the book out, then I didn't do enough. I didn't pour enough of myself into it. Just like before soccer matches, I always got nervous. I always got scared. The adrenaline was there. Well, it's the same thing when I'm going to go out and perform on a field in front of people. What's the difference between my book being that performance now, or being up on stage in front of a group of people being that performance? I should be a little scared because it means I actually care. I actually prepared, and I'm actually self-aware in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I always love to say, do it afraid. I know that that's kind of what everybody says, but it really is true. And if you just kind of push through it and do it afraid, then, a lot of times the end result is really worth it. And, you grow so much. And even if you fail forward, you learn, and then you do better next time. So yeah, I love that you were able to do that. And I'm glad you did, because I think your message is amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think it was Jamie Foxx that said that he was I was listening to it might've been actually Tim Ferriss, a podcast with Tim Ferriss. And he said, what's on the other side of fear? Like, that's like you just said, you should do it with fear, because what could be on the other side of fear? Tremendous growth. So
that's right. Like they say, if you turn the lights off in your room and all of a sudden you're afraid, if you just go and turn the lights on, you'll see that everything is still safe and everything is still the same. But if you just stay there under the covers and just keep thinking about what could be there and what's there, then you kind of psych yourself out more than anything and make yourself more afraid, when if you just turn the light on, you could see that it's the same safe space it was before you turned the light off. So
definitely.
Hi, my name is Andrew Fraley, and I believe that sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're in the San Antonio community and you need some legal help, call me at 210-725-4658.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about your book, what it's about, and then so we can know where to find that at.
Sure. It's called The Spartan Mindset, Mastering the Language of Excellence. The book is 30 some years of research, of personal experience, of listening and working with others, of mentorship, et cetera, poured into paper. I realized, like I said, that words seem to be that keystone, that source code that allowed us to translate from brain to body. And so if that's the case, then we need to start thinking very heavily about the words we use. Spartan Mindset is set up that each chapter is a word or phrase. And there are 3 types of words or phrases within the book. There are power words, which help inhibit peak performance. So these are words that when we use during high stress, high performance moments, that they actually help us. There are those peril words that do not help us. They actually can cut performance completely in half. Those are those choke words. And then there are these transformational words that not only do they actually help with the performance, but they can transform the moment and the people involved in that moment. And so each chapter is a word. I've got a story, a real life story that talks about that word in use or something similar. And then we talk about how that impacts the brain, what's happening within the brain, the brain-body connection, and some of the neuropsychology behind it. And then practical tips and hints for how we can either eliminate that word, change out that word, or enhance that word during peak performance communication environments, so that those people that it's either us that we're working with or the people that we lead or ourselves, so that we can reach that peak performance each and every time we're out there on the field or in the gym or on the stage or in the office.
Wow, that's so cool. So when you had the idea to write the book, what was your first step?
So the first step was accepting the challenge, because one of the chapters is about challenge accepted, no takebacks. My son was the one that sat down with me and said, "Dad, you should really write a book. You're such a word nerd. Let's do this." And so I said, all right, the challenge was I was going to write the book in a month. And it sounds flippant because you're like, oh my gosh, it is. But it was, like I said, it was 30 years of research put into the book. But it was like, the goal was to map it out so that I could write a chapter every day and get it done. So the very first thing I did after accepting the challenge was I had to sit down and figure out what is each chapter, and then map out the research behind the chapters and the hints and tips that would matter. And so when I went to write every day, and it was every day, I did it in a month. I would actually sit down with I have a writing environment. I have a piece of software I use, and on one side of the screen would be all of my research and bullet points and everything that I wanted to put into that chapter. And the other side would be writing. And I would literally put my music on and I would just write. And so half of it was looking at a bullet point and remembering, oh, I need to pull out that research from Mark Robert Waldman. And the other half was letting all the years that have built up in my neurons pour out onto page.
Whoa. That a month? You just came up with the idea and then just made what made you make the commitment of 1 month? Why wasn't it 3 months or a year?
Well, they say it takes 21 days to change it, to create a habit. And that was sort of the joke, was if I could do it in a month, then it's going to help with my writing habit. It's going to help with, and the other problem is I wanted to get it out. I wanted to get it out of my brain. Now here's the crazy part. I write it in a month, and I'm, my son and I, my family are like, wow, this is great. And then it sat for 5 years and got dusty because imposter syndrome kicked in and other things. Life happens, things get in the way. And all of a sudden 5 years have gone by and it's still on my computer and it's nowhere near being published. So I re-engaged with the only agent who ever gave me the time of day when I was sourcing it, earlier. And re-engaged with him. And he said, let's get this to a publisher. We found, we talked with Morgan James. They said, we're in, let's do this. So interesting thing that happened was I go through the process of editing and all of that. And so that was like a 4 or 5 month, almost a 6 month process. I get to the end of it. And Morgan James says, the final piece is we want you to review the manuscript one last time, make these small changes, give it one more read, and then send us the manuscript back complete with basically a go to print email. Like, we're going to print now. I said, great. So we're on a family vacation. I read on the plane out. I'm reviewing the manuscript in the airport on the plane out and in the clubs and all that. We get there the next morning. I wake up and I finish my read and I make all the changes that I needed to make in the system, hour or two of making all these changes. I upload it to the email. I upload it to the Dropbox. I ship off the email saying, go to print. And I open my Facebook to post, hey, my manuscript's going to print. And a memory pops up that exact day, 5 years prior, I had posted, I just finished 40,000 words in a book and I'm going to take a break. And I was sitting at the local distillery with somebody else's book with a whiskey to celebrate. And I was like, are you kidding me? The exact day, 5 years later, that means it's meant to be.
Absolutely. Wow, that's really cool. That's like crazy. What a coincidence.
It was a little goosebump moment.
So obviously you went with a publisher, right? So
yes.
What did you consider doing self-publishing?
I did, because that was one of the reasons why it took so long to publish is I couldn't find a solution. I couldn't find a publisher. It's really hard to get published these days through the traditional routes. Mm-hmm. And then it was a matter of, do I have the funds to actually set aside? And, kids in high school still, and we're traveling a lot. And so it's like, do I have the cash flow to actually do this? And of course, then the voice in the back of my head is going, don't put it out there, Reed. Don't put it out there. Don't, this is scary. So the beauty of Morgan James is they are a full publisher. They did everything for me. They do the ISBN and Library of Congress, and they all the cover, you see the cover behind me. They did all the cover design and all of that, but they're a hybrid in the sense that I still have full ownership of the book, and I've got really good royalties on top of that. And I had to buy a set of books ahead of time to help fund some of the costs. But other than that, they've done all the work for me. And so I would go that route again. In fact, I have a friend who's been published 25 times with traditional publishers and reached out and said, I think I'm going to move to the Morgan James route because I love the fact the biggest thing for me is it's mine. Copyright, right. Reed Maltby inside the book. So I own it. I can do my own audiobook. I can repurpose the book. It's mine. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And that was the best part, was I felt like I wanted my voice to be my voice, not owned by somebody else.
Right. So when you're on that family vacation and you're reading this book, was there any point in time where there was stuff you wanted to change, or were you just like, this is perfect, it's exactly right?
No, there were things that I wanted to change. There were things that I didn't. There's one chapter, at the time when I wrote it in 2015, it talks about a tightening industry, and that person now has sort of lost some of their shine as a business person and as a personality. But I left it in there because it's real. It's what I was writing about in 2015. So and the story is a real story that this person, people said, oh, this can't be done. And the person went and did it. And then they said, well, that can't be done. And the person went and did it. And so I left it in there. There's a story, actually, probably one of the things that's been the scariest one for me is there's some personal stories. And those ones that I really thought about taking out. But there's a personal story about when I was cut from my high school basketball team. And it's about the word but. And the coach said some nice things, gave me some compliments. I do remember that. I do remember feeling really good about those compliments. But then that coach said, but, and cut me. And I really don't remember what was said prior to the word but, because that's what but does. But is so stinky that it makes you forget everything that was said before it. And you only remember the negative that comes behind it.
That's right.
And so I did take creative license and put in there what I thought or what I felt like the coach could say or something. So that part I know is not like, I should have just said blah, 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 Charlie Brown teacher voice, but it didn't have this much powerful impact. So I put in stuff that I don't know exactly what was said before. So it's kind of scary. I almost took that out because I thought, I don't really remember what he said. But then again, it gives it that power to say, these are the good things that could have been said. I don't remember them.
Exactly. I always say that but means forget everything I just said. Now I'm going to tell you how I really feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So that's so interesting about the book and how it came to be and all of the things you went through with that. That is great. What is your favorite part of the book?
The transformational section. There's a controversial word in the transformational section that at least in a lot of coaching circles in the soccer world, they absolutely, you either love this word or you can't stand it. It's the word unlucky. And I've had fellow experts who are, I've got a friend who's with the FA in England, and he can't stand the word because he feels like it gives people an excuse for lack of performance or lack of execution. And that word's in there for me, but I explain in the book and I explained to other people, but I used it as a trigger word. It wasn't just somebody makes a mistake and I go, oh, unlucky, and you're admonished from all accountability for what you just did. For me, it was more like an athlete's going to get stuck in that moment and they're never going to move past the mistake they made unless I can just be like, unlucky, I saw it, it's all good, fix it on the next play. Or referee makes a bad call, I can get mad at the referee and scream at the referee and do all of that. And then my players are going to feed off my energy and they're going to start screaming at the referee. And now we're going to spend a game making excuses for why we're not going to win because the referee's cheating us versus referee making a bad call and me going unlucky. And that tells my players, I saw it. There's nothing we can do about it. We control what we can control. That is not something we can control. Get on with your lives. And then, of course, the joke is that, as Al McGuire used to say, when refs would make mistakes, he'd always whisper to them, you owe me one, because he wouldn't yell at them. And that was, for me, I yelled at refs in my career, trust me. But when I learned the word unlucky could be so universal, it was like a Swiss Army knife for trigger words in the brain. I used it to remind referees, I saw that bad call, not going to yell at you, so you owe me.
That's a great way to flip it to a positive. You acknowledge the bad behavior, but then at the same time, you give that positive feedback to there's nothing we can do about it. Let's just move forward. It's all good and keep the spirit up. That's great. Definitely. So we're all about giving and the little give, doing things that make a big impact. You've clearly made a huge impact in a lot of lives and done a lot to help other athletes out there and coaches and help them grow and be better. You've done so much. Is there a little give that you can think of that maybe our audience could do to help in their community?
Yes. For me, it comes down to this. I just, the other day, I wrote this in a book. I signed my book for somebody and wrote this in there, and just, it started to really resonate with me. Speak loudly, people hear you. Speak intelligently, people will follow or will listen to you, but speak lovingly and people will follow you. And I think that's what we need more in this world is you can do this at any moment in the day. Anybody walk up to somebody and just speak to them with love, and you can change their entire day just with doing that. I used to say high fives change lives, but really it's the words. Every word matters. So in your community itself, just tell somebody how much they matter to you. Give somebody a meaningful, genuine compliment, or just say something out of love and see what happens.
That's a great message. That is so true. Like you can really change somebody's day by just simply acknowledging them and speaking with them and showing them that, you genuinely care and you genuinely see them. That's great. So what have you done, if any? Do you have any charities or anything that you love or you're passionate about?
Yes, I was COO for Doors of Change for a few years here in San Diego. I stepped back from the sports world, and this organization is very near and dear to me. The founder of the organization knew nothing about nonprofits, nothing about homeless youth. When he founded the organization, he was looking for something to do. He had to retire from his career because of an injury, and he wanted to be engaged in his community. And he discovered that this was at the time a very overlooked, underrepresented, under serviced community, the homeless youth between the ages of 18 and 25. We have stuff for children, we have stuff for adults, we have stuff for veterans, we have stuff for seniors. We didn't have anything for that subset. So when I started working for that organization, it was a group of youth that I had never worked with. I'd worked with athletes, I'd worked with school children, I'd worked with, you name it. I had never been around homeless youth. So to open my heart up to that group and to see what Jeffrey Sitkoff has done with that group at Doors of Change was phenomenal. They when I came on board in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic, our biggest issue was our biggest fundraiser was a live concert. And of course, working with homeless youth meant being in person. This organization pivoted. And I was just telling somebody about it earlier today. They pivoted. And not only did they survive the pandemic, but the organization actually thrived during the pandemic. We had our best fundraising years ever, even without concerts, because we started really engaging with people and telling the stories of these children and creating programs that had a meaningful impact. And then our numbers for the kids were unbelievable. In 2020, we do things like we house youth, we get them documents, we help them with employment referrals, we get them mental health referrals, domestic violence referrals, bus passes. We have a deal with Greyhound that if a child, San Diego is a destination. So a lot of our kids, homeless youth here, are not actually San Diegans. They're from all over the country. But they get here, they get stuck, they can't afford to live anymore. They're on the streets. They get duped into being on the streets. They're taken advantage of. We have a deal with Greyhound that we can get them back home. So we get them a free bus pass one way to wherever we find somebody on the other end who can be their guardian or an adult in their life already, or family member who can take care of them, and then we make the exchange. So things like that. And what we saw, the other thing we do is we house these youth. We get them off the street, but the key is they won't get help unless we do the things unless we take care of the things that got them on the street in the first place. If it's mental health, we've got to get the mental health fixed before they're actually going to be able to stay off the streets for good. But we got 83 kids off the street in 2020. And I just sat down with Jeffrey the other night for dinner. My wife and I went out to dinner with he and his wife because I love Jeffrey and I love this organization with all my heart. He told me that they've gotten 349 youth off the streets in 2022.
Wow.
83 to 349. They're now up to 2 full-time case managers. They got 188 kids mental health services last year through a program that we created when I was working with them. We created this program called YES, Youth Emotional Support Team. And we became the connector between the mental health services and these youth. And because it was remote, we did everything remote with these kids. We would go to the mental health care providers, ask, what do you need? And they say, we need an advocate out in the streets telling the kids we exist. We'd go out and we'd put up flyers. We'd do Facebook messaging because these kids are connected to their phones, even homeless. And then we would give them phones or computers so that they could do remote care with the mental health providers through the YES team. And we had a couple of foundations here in town that jumped on board and helped support it. And it's now 188 kids have gotten mental health care in the last year because of it.
Wow, I love that. So how do you know how this all became a startup nonprofit? Like what sparked the idea in his head? You mentioned he didn't really have a lot of experience with nonprofits.
Yes. So Jeffrey was a physical therapist and an award-winning photographer. So he did a lot of concerts and that was his specialty, was going to concerts and filming artists, musicians. And when he had an injury that prevented him from doing physical therapy anymore. So he sold off the business, and he said that was the thing. He wanted to give back to the world. He wanted to leave a legacy. So he started investigating all these nonprofits. And he said, I looked at like 100 different nonprofits in San Diego, and I'd go and I'd visit with them, and I'd meet with the board and I'd see their programs. And he said, and one night I went down to see this program that was working with homeless youth. And he says, and I go into the facility, and he said, I'm watching them work with these homeless youth. And he says, these kids won't look us in the eyes. They trudge along. They want nothing to do with adults. their whole world has been turned upside down by adults that they thought they trusted, that took advantage of them or treated them poorly. A lot of these kids are on the streets because they get kicked out of abusive situations, manipulative situations. Parents don't agree with their lifestyle and they say, you're not under my roof. And so these kids feel betrayed by adults. And he said, and as we're leaving, this one girl looks at us, makes eye contact and says something and leaves. And he says, the one worker starts crying. He says, what? She goes, she's been coming to us for 6 months. This is the first time she's ever spoken to us. And Jeffrey said, this is the group I need to be with. And so the beauty is he matched. So he started investigating it and figuring out what he could do, started fundraising, asking people for money, telling his story. He would go to sports bars and get up at halftime of the football games and tell his story to the audience of the sports bar and pass the hat to raise money. And it just truly grassroots. And he discovered that the kids love music. So he has continued to do his photography, but now he works with musicians who will do concerts for us for Doors of Change, and he sells off memorabilia. So this last 2 years in a row now, Billy Joel has donated a keyboard, signed keyboard, and we've auctioned it off at we're back to live concerts. I mean, it's a true grassroots story, and everything's about impact for Jeffrey. And the stories the kids that come back that work, we have a former homeless youth who's one of our violin teachers, and to see, he's a phenomenal violinist, but to see this kid thriving and now giving back to the next generation of homeless youth is just, it's so heartwarming.
Yes, that's very inspiring that they give back. They have the need in the beginning, and then they fulfill that need for someone else when they get older. That's great.
They love Jeffrey. Jeffrey just got married recently, and we all went to the wedding, and some of the former homeless youth who are now either board members or working or at least still connected to us showed up, and to see them, just how they light up when Jeffrey comes around. It's just like, he's the one adult that they knew they could trust in their lives, and they could never trust any adult, but he always followed through on his promises. He always did what he said he was going to do. And he got them the help they needed.
That's fantastic. Wow. Great. Well, is there anything else you want to share with the audience about you and what you're all about before we go?
Just that if words matter to you, if the idea of mastering the language of excellence or just this Spartan mindset concept of using words that really can transform yourself and the people around you, I encourage you to check out the book. It comes out April 18th. It is on pre-order now, and I do have some pre-order bonuses. So if you do go to Coach Reed, you can click through that and you'll see where you can buy the book and fill out that form if you do pre-order, because I've got some bonuses for people that are ordered ahead of time. And other than that, if it's on your heart and you're not in San Diego, find a homeless youth nonprofit that you could potentially, trust me, we have people that just give $5 or $10 a month. Actually, I give like $15 or $16 a month to the nonprofit. That's my commitment to it, because we have some tiered levels, and that money right there is enough to help a couple homeless youth every year. So if it's on your heart to help these 18 to 25-year-olds who need that help, I strongly encourage you to please find a homeless youth nonprofit and find ways to support these kids.
Wow. Great. Well, thank you so much, Coach Reed. I really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing all about all the things you're doing to keep that ripple effect going with that positivity. That's great. I can't wait to read your book myself, and I will certainly encourage our audience to read it too. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to watching your story and how it continues.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much. Bye. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for watching episode 2. My interview with Coach Reed was amazing. I love his message about the power of words. The power of words really are so powerful. I can remember some words that were spoken to me that were not kind, and I will never forget that. So please be mindful of your words. If you guys would like to know more about Coach Reed and his mission, then please visit coachreed.com. And if you want to buy his book, The Spartan Mindset, you can also find that on his website. If you found the nonprofit he selected for today's episode to be interesting, the Doors of Change that are focused on youth homeless, please go to doorsofchange.org. You can find all of the information there. And if you find it in your heart to give back, please do. If you'd like to know more about The Little Give or be a guest on the show, you can always visit our website at thelittlegive.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.